We all know the electromagnetic spectrum, right? It has Vibgyor at the center, that's the visible spectrum, that's the spectrum your retina can see, and there's infrared frequencies below red and ultraviolet frequencies above violet. So if metaphorically each of us is this electromagnetic spectrum, our waking state frequencies are Vibgyor, and our subconscient is infrared frequencies below red, and there's the superconscient ultraviolet frequencies beyond the frequencies of violet. So what we see, our waking state, is just the tip of the iceberg that we really are. The actually more powerful part of us, the subconscient, very powerful, the superconscient, infinitely more powerful, and both are there sandwiching our existence, but we are not aware of it. So what is the subconscient? The subconscient is that in us which has frequencies below our waking state, so where we are less conscious than in our waking state. And the superconscient is where we are infinitely more conscious than what we are in the waking state. Now, in Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, it's all about bringing the light of the superconscient or our God self all the way down to the subconscient and changing the programming over there. And in that sense, it's a yoga which hasn't been attempted before, because all other yogas, if you just escape into some or the other realm of the superconscient, it was okay. There was no demand to bring its light down to the subconscient and change it. That's why this yoga is more rigorous, in that sense sometimes more slow, but in one sense much more permanent and effective. So I'm going to start with a little story by Silviu Crăciunas, who was tortured by the Romanian communist regime. This is an excerpt from a book called Lost Footsteps. Read it, Isha? Okay. One evening, when the radiator had begun its mournful music, the wall in front of me rolled back. This is the author speaking. And a chain of snowy mountains gleamed in the rising sun. In the foreground was a little Indian temple dedicated to goddess Kali. A tall tree shaded it. So this is at a part where he's kind of reached his wit's end. He's suicidal. He wants to escape, but he doesn't know how. And that's when he's describing a vision he had. Okay, in his prison, this is the vision he had. At its foot, an old man sat with his legs tucked under him and his hands resting on his knees in Brahmin fashion. He had a long and very thin white beard. His ascetic face had the same serenity as the blue sky stretching over the dazzling peaks. As I gazed at him, he bowed his head slightly, smiled and said, "I can see you have forgotten me. Don't you remember Aurobind, first name Dogos?" That's how he heard it. Aurobind first part, Dogos second. The Brahmin. I heard myself replying, "You have no idea how long I've been looking for you and calling you." "I had to make a long journey to get here," he said. "It took me 60 years. For months after this, I lived in the company of the Brahmin, whom I believed at the time to be a real person other than myself. But these visions were different in character from the nightmare hallucinations I had had before." Of course, he'd had a lot of hallucinations. "It seemed that somehow I had reached a deeper level of my being, and these new experiences, instead of helping my enemies, marked the beginnings of a period of spiritual integration. I held long conversations with the hermit, and it was he who argued me out of committing suicide, persuading me that life was sacred and must be lived to the last breath. I complained to him that locked inside these walls and thinking ceaselessly night and day without a moment's respite, I had reached the limits of my endurance. Tell me," I begged him, "am I the victim of these men who hold me captive, or at the mercy of some harsh, blind laws of nature?" He explained to me his view of suffering. "Some people it destroys," he says. "Others are challenged by it to resist some evil or undertake some positive, creative act. Some are corrupted, lose control over themselves and become cruel and vengeful. Others grow in strength and grace. But what can a man do alone, armed with nothing but his free will against an overwhelming evil?" I asked him. This is a question many of us asked, right? We have our own prisons, our own persecutors, and it's a question, say that, what can I do in the face of this? So the Brahmin answered him. In answer, he told me a story. Two swallows nested under the eaves of a fisherman's hut near the seashore. Teaching their young to fly, they took them out over the sea, gradually training them to cross long distances and to face the hardships they would have to undergo during their migration. The fledglings shot into the air, exulting in the joy of flight and freedom. But a gust of wind caught one of them and flung it down upon the surface of the waves. The small bird kept its wings outstretched so that it did not sink, but neither could it rise. Floating like a leaf, it called piteously to its parents as they circled over it. You understand, no? One fledgling fell in water and it spread its wings. So with its wings outspread, it could float, but it could not fly and it would not sink. It was just stuck. The parent swallows did their best to calm and to encourage it. Then they flew back to the shore and made innumerable journeys to the water's edge, each time carrying a drop of water in their beaks and pouring it in the sand. Thus they hoped to empty the ocean to save their young. So at one level, it seems like a foolish effort, right? They are never going to be able to empty the ocean with their drops in the beaks. But when the going gets tough, that's what we are called on to do, to make whatever little effort we can make. Seeing the story to its completion, how it ended was when a sage saw the bird's efforts, he felt so sorry for him that he picked up the fledgling, and it was safe. So the whole point of this story is that whenever we are in an impossible situation, we must never give up. Any effort we make, however minuscule and impossible it seems, it's noted by the superconscient in us. The superconscient is our God self, and the superconscient will use the leverage of that effort to somehow reach us and bail us out. So long as we have a breath, whatever the difficulty, we must never give up. We have to keep making our effort. So that's the story that was told to him. Their heroic lesson is their heroic effort is a lesson to us, the Brahmin went on. The human will and spirit must also not be resigned at moments of crisis. It must go on looking for a solution, however overwhelming the odds. You must not accept defeat. You must not believe your efforts to be in vain. If you have the blind courage to continue to endure and struggle, you will find a new beginning in your life. My conversations, now the prisoner says again, my conversations with the hermit living in solitude near the temple to the goddess Kali had lasted several months. Outside, spring was appearing. The strength of the light and a suspicion of warmth in the air were the first signs. Who was the Brahmin? The Brahmin had introduced himself as Aurobindo's ghost, but he didn't know who he was. Why was he trying to give me precious support? Understanding my perplexity, he gently held out a pale skeleton-like hand and stroked my forehead with his cold fingers. Somehow transfigured, he said to me with emotion, "You want to know who I am? I am your spirit, your reason. You appealed to me in a moment of abject despair. In your isolation and helplessness, only I am capable of encouraging you, only I am capable of encouraging you to bolster your morale and strengthen your will. Apart from me, there is no one who is able to come to your aid. Put your trust in my strength and you will never regret it." So, for those of you who came late, just to recap, this is the true story of a prisoner in communist Romania, and he was so desperate that he wanted to commit suicide. And then he had a vision of a Kali temple in the hills and a Brahmin with a white beard and long hair appearing to him and somehow talking to him and convincing him not to commit suicide. And the Brahmin introduced himself as Aurobindo's ghost. That's how he registered it, because of the breakup. So to continue, this encounter was indeed a turning point in my existence. Gradually my nightmares left me, and I discovered an inner calm and balance and achieved control over my mind and body. After days and weeks of practice, I found that I could sit motionless in my chair for hours, my head leaning gently against the wall and my eyes open. I breathed deeply and quietly, my will controlling my heartbeats and keeping them steady. Hunger and fatigue took less toll on my strength than when I had dissipated it in pacing up and down my cell, fighting against drowsiness. My small ration of food and the 2 or 3 hours of sleep I was allowed, because that's another way of torturing, no? They don't let you sleep. 2 or 3 hours of sleep I was allowed out of the 24 hours were now sufficient for my bodily needs. To detach my mind totally from my surrounding took more time and effort. At first I told myself that I was a spectator in a darkened room. My prison life was nothing but a film projected on a screen, which I trained myself to interrupt at will. At a later stage, I succeeded in looking upon my body sitting motionless in the chair as though it were a photograph. Still later, I felt my spirit able to escape the prison walls and undertake innumerable long journeys. So this is a direct effect of the superconscient communicating with him. He was trapped in prison, and at first his subconscient reacted. He was suicidal, he was having nightmare hallucinations. And then Sri Aurobindo's vision was nothing but the influence of the superconscient on him. Time no longer dragged. Solitude was not a hardship. It was the opportunity for ceaseless contemplation. Freed from its anxieties, my mind devoted itself passionately to pure thought. I now longed to survive, even if need be in prison, for I was enchanted by the happiness of my new spiritual freedom. I longed to encompass the universe, to stretch its mysteries. It's as inexhaustible as infinity. At the same time, this transformation made available to me a source of energy which enormously increased my powers of resistance to my adversaries. This experience rings a bell? Where? What? Where else have we encountered something similar? Yes, Sri Aurobindo himself had an experience like this when he was in solitary confinement in Alipore jail, and now he is giving the same experience to others. At the same time, this transformation made available to me a source of energy which enormously increased my powers of resistance to my adversaries. Freeing myself from theories and beliefs, I became conversant with the laws of universe and developed a new understanding of suffering, freedom, discord and harmony, revolution and evolution. In this book of factual events, there is no place for philosophical treatise. I mention it only because it was a development of these ideas which gave me the will to stay alive in order to pass them on to the West. The book is called Lost Footsteps, if you ever want to read it, by Silviu Crasinius. Crasunius did finally identify Aurobindo Ghosh as Aurobindo Ghosh, whom we call Sri Aurobindo. How many people have been helped by him when upholding the human spirit, we will never know. Sri Aurobindo is the spirit leading the spirit. What is noteworthy in Crasunia's story is that the author experienced Sri Aurobindo 4 years after the great yogi had left his human body in December 1950. So this must have happened in 1954. Stories keep on coming in of his or the mother's help during the war or in circumstances of political oppression. A German infantryman who had seen Sri Aurobindo in the war came to the ashram in the 60s. That's the story of John Kelly. That was another person who was hugely helped by Sri Aurobindo when he was fighting the Allies. He would keep telling him, go here, go there, and he became a war hero. And when he was awarded an award, he asked, he didn't know who Sri Aurobindo was till much later. He just called him Great Sir. So he said, Great Sir, what should I tell them? This award doesn't belong to me. So Sri Aurobindo said, say nothing. I have no use of awards. You keep them. So that's what is being talked about. what we call Sri Aurobindo's force or the mother's force, or Sri Aurobindo's light or the mother's light, is simply the evolutionary force or light, and the aspiring human spirit will automatically contact them, for they are simply these forces incarnated. So Sri Aurobindo, this story I chose to begin our talk with, to say that however dark mind states grip us, they are usually uprisings from the subconscient. But we have an equal, in fact more powerful antidote to the poison of the subconscient in our superconscient. Botanists have found that if a very poisonous plant is growing somewhere in nature, it's almost like an intelligence in nature very close to that poisonous plant. There is a plant which will give you the antidote to the toxic plant. So the same soil is growing the poison and its antidote, and each of us is this ecosystem. If we have a very toxic way of being in our, which comes from our subconscient, we have a powerful antidote to it in our superconscient, and it's about accessing that antidote. But usually when the subconscient throws out its poisons, it makes us very unconscious. It's like that story of a man who's stung by a snake, and instead of tending to the snake bite and removing the poison, he's seized with anger at the snake, and he starts hitting the snake while the poison spreads in his own body. So instead of hitting the snake, so much more intelligent to look within ourselves for the antidote to this poison, isn't it? And it's available to us. The Mother and Sri Aurobindo, in a sense, are our personalized, formed superconscient, wearing a form so that we can communicate with it. Every time we communicate with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we are actually communicating with our own superconscient. And Mother says that I am always with you because I am you. So very important, when the poisons of this, you can come here if you need a backrest. When the poisons of the subconscient arise within us, it's very, very important not to let them make us unconscious. It's very important to find the antidote to that poison in our superconscient. So, Mother says, this is from her agenda, 29th May 1962. She says, I had the vision of a being of light, utterly luminous, lying asleep in the inconscient. Inconscient is even more unconscious than the subconscient. It was as if all the obscurity of the inconscient were only the sleep of that luminous being. I knew that when he awakes, the inconscient will disappear. So in a very visual form, the Mother's being shown that the darkness of the inconscient and the subconscient is not really dark. It has light inside it which is waiting to wake up. So this passage of Savitri explains this very well, page 600. A truth occult has made this mighty world. Occult is hidden. So this world is not just a random chaotic place. There's a wisdom, there's a hidden truth that has planned everything. A truth occult has made this mighty world. The Eternal's wisdom and self-knowledge act in ignorant mind and in the body steps. The inconscient is the superconscious sleep. Mother saw this, right? The inconscient is the superconscious sleep. An unintelligible intelligence. Unintelligible is what my intelligence can't understand, unfathomable. An unintelligible intelligence invents creation's paradox profound. So I can't understand the contradictions that stare me in the face, right? I can't understand sometimes why human beings are the way they are. I can't understand sometimes why I am the way I am. So an unintelligible intelligence invents creation's paradox profound. Spiritual thought is crammed in matter's forms. Unseen, it throws out a dumb energy and works a miracle by a machine. All here, so this is talking about that metaphor of the ghost in the machine. Very often it's said like the Vedas call the human mind body a yantra, a machine. But there is a ghost in the machine, the superconscient, the spirit inside it. So works a miracle by a machine. All here is a mystery of contraries. Darkness, a magic of self-hidden light. What a magical line. So he's telling us that darkness doesn't really exist. It's a magic of self-hidden light, light that's choosing to hide itself to appear dark. So if I'm in a moment of very dark anger, that's appearing to be dark, but hidden in that anger is the light of peace. Like the subconscient and superconscient aren't separate. They are sort of intermingled in a matrix, and it's what you choose to draw out. From that same pool of consciousness, you can draw out darkness and stay with it, or you can draw out the light and stay with that. So Mother says it, that at every moment you have the choice between the height and the abyss, but you have to choose. If you choose to play the blame game, blame people, indulge anger, you're choosing the abyss, which is all right. Nobody has a problem with that, and Mother's not going to condemn you for that because she's unconditional love. But the only one who will have a problem with that is you, because you will suffer. Every time you choose the abyss, you're going to suffer. And every time you choose the height, you're the one who will be happy. All here is a mystery of contraries. Darkness, a magic of self-hidden light. Suffering, some secret rapture's tragic mask. And death, an instrument of perpetual life. Now we come to Sri Aurobindo's words from Letters on Yoga. In the ordinary movement of yoga, the lower nature has to be changed by the pressure of the higher being, the higher consciousness. What we aim at in the integral yoga is to bring down the supramental consciousness, the superconscient, into all the paths, even the lowest, even the physical and the subconscious, so that all may be transformed into the image of the higher being. So let's understand at a very practical level what Sri Aurobindo is saying. This is a recurring theme in his writings, that in my integral yoga, the higher has to pull up the lower. The stronger part of you has to reach out and uplift the weaker part of you. And building this bridge between the higher and lower in you is the process of conscious collaboration. Consciously, the Mother says, no, the world is preparing for a big change, will you help? Every time I consciously collaborate with the light in me to transform the darkness in me, I am saying a wholehearted yes to her. Very often we want to help people around and we go to pieces, right? I just heard about somebody today who's taking great care of a family member at home who's bedridden and very ill. But in the process, he's going to pieces. He stopped his meditation. He's always grumpy, snappy. And I couldn't help thinking that I wish he would do it differently, because Mother says that the best help you can give people around you is by changing yourself. Any help you give people around you out of a fragmented being, it will be fragmented help. Whereas if you keep yourself whole, and from that wholeness you spend 5 minutes with the person, you'll help the person far, far more than spending 1 hour with the person. You want a backrest? Then spending 1 hour with the person out of a fragmented being. So the biggest responsibility you have, spiritual human responsibility, is to keep yourself whole. If you keep yourself whole, it's like your consciousness is contagious. It will reach the person and help the person far more than hours of physically trying to help and in a fragmented way, right? So every time, and in a way you could call this selfish. Suppose I have a sick person at home and I have 1 hour, and the choice is to spend it with the sick person or to regain my inner wholeness. I am very clear I will choose the second, because I know that without being whole, I can't ever help anyone beyond a point. So be selfish, and sometimes it's a good, because otherwise a person sinking and you make it your mission not to let the person sink, and you try to pull that person up, but neither do you pull that person up and you sink down. Then there are two people in the hole. What's the point? You've achieved nothing. It's better to keep yourself whole and then help them. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is saying, that whenever things go wrong, forget the outside. Don't fix the outside. First sit with yourself, and in whatever way you can, fix your inside. If you fix the inside, the universe outside corrects itself. Yeah? And how do you fix your inside? By drawing on the higher parts of you. So it's very simple. It's not a very complicated process. Sometimes it's as simple as a heartfelt prayer. Sri Aurobindo writes in Savitri, a prayer, a master act, a king's idea can link man's strength to a transcendent force. Then miracle becomes the common rule. Yeah? So let's do a very simple thing which you can do anytime you're in a mind state of fear, anger, agitation. Keep reminding yourself, the snake that has bitten me is not important. The importance is to remove the poison. If I'm going to attack the snake, the poison is going to spread in me, which is not intelligent. Yeah? So we slowly shut our eyes, we sit tall, and if we are here, I'm assuming most of us have a connection with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, but in case one or two of us don't, then bring to mind any image of divinity. But the rest of us, bring Mother's image into your heart. Recollect the story I shared about the prisoner who was being tortured so much that he was suicidal. And then his inner vision opened, and although he'd never met or heard of Sri Aurobindo, he had visions of Sri Aurobindo which brought him to peace, which even his prisoners couldn't understand. So let's make in a small way that experience our own. Maybe I'm in the prison of my fear about the future, or anger, or whatever else it is. That's the snake that's biting me. For a moment, let me forget about this snake and worry about the venom of anger or fear that's inside me. And in whatever way I can, let me pray to the Mother with all my heart and sincerity to remove this poison, whether it's anger, lust, greed, jealousy. But see if there's one part of me which has gotten so comfortable with this poison that it's become my identity. And I feel it's good if it's there. But just question, is it really good? And then with all the sincerity you can muster, just offer it to Mother. Set me free of this. In life, whatever step you need me to take, guide me to take it. But inside myself, free me of this poison. And Mother says, every sincere prayer is answered. If my prayer is not answered, somewhere maybe there's a lack of sincerity. Maybe I don't really want it to be answered. And if my prayer has been sincere, then let me rest assured, if not now, some point in time it will surely be answered. And then slowly open your eyes. Any questions? Anything to share? So what I'm saying is, it's something as simple as a sincere prayer. That can itself be magical. So now these are words of Sat Prem from a book, Adventure of Consciousness. As soon as we have touched a certain intensity of consciousness or light, it automatically exerts a pressure on the rest of our nature and brings out the corresponding obscurities or resistances. It's like this. If you have a beaker which has muddy sand at the bottom, you will see clear water. But if you stir it with a stick, all the mud will come up. So whenever we connect with the Mother's force is that stick which stirs up deep-rooted patterns and wounds in the subconscient, which then come up. So that's what is being said here. It exerts a pressure on the rest of our nature and brings out the corresponding obscurities or resistances. It is like abruptly pumping an overdose of oxygen into the ocean's depths. A few odd eels, squid, struggle frantically or even explode. It is a strange reversal of consciousness, like going from a brightly lit room, the superconscient, to the same room darkened, subconscient. From a joyous room to the same room. He's saying the same room because it's not like the superconscient is this lit room here and that dark room there. The darkness and light are simultaneously existing here. When the light acts, the darkness shows itself. It's like going from a brightly lit room to the same room darkened, from a joyous room to the same room pain-ridden. Everything is the same, yet everything is changed. The progress of integral yoga does not take place in a straight line, rising higher and higher out of sight, tapering off to a finer and finer point. But according to Sri Aurobindo, in a spiral that slowly and methodically annexes all the levels of our being in a vaster and vaster opening and on a deeper and deeper foundation. And we discern not only a method behind this force, or rather this consciousness force, but also regular cycles and a rhythm as certain as that of the tides and the moons. So he's saying that in integral yoga, it's not a vertical climb. Say, let's take anger. I have a lot of anger and I work with, you substitute with whatever you like, greed, lust, jealousy, whatever. And I connect with the mother. It's not like I'll keep climbing up. It's like this is the starting point of anger. I'll often make a circle and come back to the same point, but it won't be at the same level. I'll make a circle and come back to the same point a little higher. Next time I'll make a circle, come back to a point a little higher. So we don't rise up in verticals, we rise up in spirals. So we can't defeat human nature at one go, right? But every time we give it a fight, even if we lose, something of it is weakened, and next time it comes up, it'll come up with less intensity and less intensity and less intensity. And we discern not only a method behind this force, or rather this consciousness force, but also regular cycles and a rhythm as certain as that of the tides and the moons. The more we advance, the vaster the cycles, the closer their connection with a cosmic movement, until the day when we will be able to perceive in our own descents, the periodic descents of the earth consciousness, and in our own difficulties, all the turmoils of the earth that resists and rebels. Don't you sometimes find there's a collective consciousness in the air? Like there are spells when a whole lot of us feel similar lows, similar fears. It's like something in the air which all of us are part of. Eventually, everything will grow so intimately linked that we will be able to read in the smallest things, the minutest accidents of daily life and the objects around us, the sign of vaster depressions about to pass over men and make them too ascend or descend on the same evolutionary crest. Then we will see that we are unfailingly led towards a goal, that all things down to the tiniest have a meaning. Not one detail stirs without everything stirring, and we are on our way to a greater adventure than we had thought. It's a strange phenomenon, as if we held the exact shadow of our light, a shadow or difficulty or problem that confronts us again and again with a disconcerting insistence, always the same beneath different masks, and is in the most diverse circumstances, which returns after every battle won with an increased strength proportional to our new intensity of consciousness, as if we had to fight the same battle again and again on every newly conquered plane of consciousness. What he's saying is, if we have a particular darkness in us, say a way of being fearful all the time, and we invite the mother's force to change that fear, sometimes it comes out with a vengeance, because her force is going right down to the root and bringing it out from its root. So at the root, of course, it's more concentrated. And every time we seem to fight the same battle again and again. But what solaces us is we are incapable of fighting it on our own. We have to invite the mother's force to fight it for us, because Sri Aurobindo says it again and again. However equipped you are, no human equipment can do my yoga. The best we can do is open to the mother's force and invite her force to do the transformation of our nature. So in Savitri there are those lines, this hidden foe lodged in the human breast, man must overcome or miss his higher fate. This hidden foe is those dark patterns in the subconscient mind, or vital, or in whichever part of our being. This hidden foe lodged in the human breast, man must overcome or miss his higher fate. This is the inner war without escape. Now, these are words of from the Adventure of Consciousness again. Sri Aurobindo does say global. He does speak of the supermind as the higher hemisphere of consciousness, because what we call the higher truth is not cut off from the earth. It is not the whole truth without its lower half. The higher does not cancel out the lower. It fulfills it. The eternal is not the opposite of the temporal any more than the two embracing arms are the opposite of the person embraced. So Mother and Sri Aurobindo's yoga is so all-embracing. He never talks about division between good and bad, between light and darkness, between strong and weak. Earlier, even darkness, he said, is a magic of self-hidden light, right? So he's saying that even the darker parts of us are constantly embraced by the light. It's like if I hug Prarthana with two hands, one is the subconscient, one is the superconscient. It's like that. They are two hands embracing the same existence. So we can't try to cut away from that. So what's true for us at an individual level is also true for us at a universal level. Very often we have people in our life who are difficult, family members, friends. If they naturally leave our lives, that's providence, that's fate. But while they are with us, if we keep wishing them away, if we keep resisting them, it's like trying to cut off a finger which has a painful boil. It's part of your body. If you try to cut it off, your body will hurt more. Because in ways we can't understand, we are infinitely connected to everyone, and energetically more so to our family members and to people we have constant interactions with. And if we try to cut them out of our lives with our words, with our behavior, we'll inflict pain on our own body. Whatever they are, first thing is bring wholeness to yourself. Don't be attached to them changing. They can only change when their karmic cycles allow them to change. They are not going to change because you want them to change. So let them be. Let them be in their soul's journey. Do what you can to help them when you can. Otherwise, don't cut short your journey in trying to help them, right? So first restore your wholeness and don't make it your responsibility to change them or heal them. Do what you can and leave it. They'll change in their own season. But don't have this constant inner dialogue, they should go away from my life. I can't be happy till they are in my life, because that resistance is only harming you and obviously harming them. So, yeah.
What about like toxic friends? It's possible to keep our distance from?
Sure you can. If you have a choice to keep away from people, sure can, but I would still, after distancing myself from the person, work on myself so that I can think of that person without any resentment. Because
If I don't have any resentment, but I can discern that this person is
then if you have a choice of walking out, of course keep your distance. When I'm saying many times we don't have that choice, because we need to be there to change. These people are our agents of our transformation. Until they've done their work well, they will not be removed from our life, no matter how hard we try. So that's what he's saying. The higher does not cancel out the lower, not individually in us and not with people either. We should not cancel out people who we feel are less conscious than us or worse than us. The higher does not cancel out the lower, it fulfills it. The eternal is not the opposite of the temporal any more than two embracing arms are opposite of the person embraced. The secret precisely is to discover the eternal in the very midst of the temporal, the infinite in the finite, and the full wholeness of things in the most obscure fraction. Otherwise, no one is embraced and no one embraces anything. The ascent of consciousness is not only the story of conquest of time, it is also the conquest of joy, of love, of vastness of being. The lower evolutionary levels are not content with cutting time and space into little pieces. They cut out everything. A law of fragmentation increasingly presides over the descent of consciousness from the spirit to the atom. Fragmentation of joy, fragmentation of love and power, and naturally fragmentation of knowledge and vision. What he's saying is, in our superconscious self, in our God self, there is no division. We are one with everything. The Brahma that Vedanta talks about. But as that superconscient gets refracted into various levels of consciousness and it descends, the law of the descent is fragmentation. There's oneness at the highest peak, but as we come down, there's more and more and more and more separation. And the more separation there is, the more smallness there is, right? Take the metaphor of a whole cake. There's so much of it, but you cut it into half, there's less of it. You cut it into quarter, and a quarter, there's still left. You cut it, there's less and less and less. So at the superconscient, there is wholeness. But as we fall from the superconscient into the mind, vital, physical, subconscient, inconscient, there's more and more division and division and division. So, Sri Aurobindo's words, the general sign of this descent is an always diminishing power of intensity. Intensity of being. You know, lots of us, many people say we just feel numb, we are just carrying on with life and the motions, but I don't really feel passionate about anything. So that's what Sri Aurobindo is saying. At the superconscient, where there's wholeness, there's intensity, intensity of peace, intensity of joy. But as we get more and more fragmented, the spirit loses intensity. We feel blah about everything. So, the general sign of this descent is an always diminishing power of intensity. Intensity of being, intensity of consciousness, intensity of force, intensity of the delight in things and the delight of existence. So too, as we ascend towards the supreme level, these intensities increase. So also, maybe when we are in Pandi, when we are meditating, our intensities increase. We look at a flower and we feel happy. Haven't we noticed that? We are walking the streets of Pandi, we see greenery, we see flower, and suddenly we feel happy because it has restored intensity to our being. But when we live cut off from that superconscious self, there's no intensity to feel anything because we are more and more fragmented, divided and blah. So yeah, it's beautiful to remember that whenever I have a poison in my being coming from the subconscient, perhaps the antidote to it is in myself, it's in my superconscient. It's just about making time and space and the will to find that antidote to remedy it. Yeah, and that's the principle of Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, using the leverage of the higher to transform the lower. So with you have to reach out for the help, because mother says, I intervene but I don't interfere. If you don't ask for my help, I'll do my best to keep you safe, but you'll have to go through your motions. But if you ask for my help, and she says one place that I'm frustrated because human beings don't call to me enough. I'm here to give you all you want, but you want to do it your way. You don't want to invite me into partnership in living your life. And she says, you all just don't call me enough. So with that, let's end. Hands together in a namaste. Once again, let's articulate that prayer we did. Whatever is the darkness in us, really praying to the Mother's force to change it into its opposite. And take a long, slow inhalation. Breathe out with Om.